Hello, everyone. My name is Chantel Powers, and welcome to my presentation, Beyond Montgomery, the Role of Black Women in Local Grassroots Civil Rights Campaign, 1945 through 1975. For my dissertation, I plan to explore how Black women organized, led, and kept local civil rights efforts going during this crucial period in history. My goal is to shine a light on the leadership, faith, and activism that often happen behind the scenes, work that was essential to the movement but does not always get the attention it deserves. As I start this journey, I've come across two dissertations that really connect with my topic. Today, I'll be sharing some key insights from those works and how they are helping me shape the direction of my own research. This presentation digs into the crucial roles Black women played in the civil rights movement, especially at the grassroots level, which is often overlooked in male-centered histories. Using Anne Marie Mingo's Black church women's lived theology and liberative social ethics during the civil rights movement and Woo Young Lee's grassroots impacts on the civil rights movement, I'll explore their methods, their sources, and key findings. I'll also show how their work has shaped and informed my own dissertation, which focuses on Black women's grassroots activism and local civil rights efforts. The years between 1945 through 1975 were a turning point for civil rights in America. While figures like Martin Luther King Jr. often grabbed the spotlight, Black women like Satima Clark, Ella Baker, and Dorothy Cotton were the backbone of grassroots organizing, using their churches, their schools, and their homes as centers of resistance. These women were the heart of the movement, organizing and planning and keeping campaigns alive in both cities and in rural areas. Driven by their faith and strong community networks, they pushed back against both racial and gender inequalities and relentless activism. Dr. Anne Marie Mingo's dissertation, which was finished at Emory in 2013, focuses on how Black church women lived out their faith in ways that pushed for justice and liberation. Using sermons, oral histories, and womanist theories, she argues that their spirituality wasn't passive. It was what powered their activism. Mingo leans on womanist theology to highlight the voices and values of women who often, or too often, been left out of the civil rights story. Her work pushes back against traditional histories by showing how deeply faith and justice were connected in these women's lives. In doing so, she shines a light on them as a thoughtful, strategic leaders whose theology helped drive real systemic change. Here's some of our overlooked pioneers. Before Rosa Parks, there was a 15-year-old girl by the name of Claudette Colvin. In March of 1955, she refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. She later became a key plaintiff in Browder versus Gill, the case that ended bus segregation. But because she was young, she had darker skin, she was unmarried, and she became pregnant as a teenager, she was mostly left out of the public story. Then there's Satima Clark, often called the mother of the movement. She created citizenship schools that taught thousands of people to read, write, and vote. Her work with the Highlander Folk School and the SCLC was foundational, but often overshadowed by male leaders. Then we have Fannie Lou Hamer, which was a former Mississippi sharecropper. She made waves in the 1964 Democratic Convention with a powerful testimony. She co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and worked tirelessly on voting rights and economic justice. But her long-term organizing rarely gets the attention that it deserves. Ella Baker was the strategist behind the scenes. She helped found SNCC and pushed for bottom-up organizing instead of top-down leadership. Because she rejected the idea of charismatic male leaders, her impact has often been underplayed. Diane Nash was a powerhouse in the Nashville sit-ins and the Freedom Rides. She helped start SNCC as well. She led major campaigns, even while pregnant and facing jail time. Still, her leadership often gets less recognition than her male peers. Lastly, we have Gloria Richardson, who led the Cambridge movement in Maryland. Her push for armed self-defense didn't fit the usual nonviolent narrative, so she was often left out. But her fight was one of the strongest and most sustained efforts of the early 60s. Mingo takes a qualitative approach, leaning heavily on oral histories and narrative analysis. She also uses interviews with civil rights activists along with church archives, sermons, and theological texts to get at the heart of what drove these women. Her sources highlight the deep moral and spiritual grounding that gave them the strength to stand up against injustice. What's powerful about her method is that it brings forward voices that are often left out of traditional histories, showing just how important memory and personal testimony are by focusing on lived experiences. Mingo also shows that Black women's faith wasn't just personal, it was a powerful force for resistance and a roadmap for justice. Mingo's point is that Black church women lived out a theology grounded in liberation, justice, and taking care of their communities. Their faith wasn't just about going to church on Sunday mornings. It was active, it was practical, and deeply connected to civil rights works. She shows how their beliefs fueled things like food drives and boycotts, voter registration efforts, and nonviolent protests. For these women, faith wasn't just personal, it was political. And it kept them going in the face of real danger. Mingo helps us to see them not as background figures in a male-led movement, but as the moral and strategic leaders who helped shape the fight for justice from the inside out. Next, we have Dr. Wong Young Lee's research insight. He did his dissertation back in 2018 at Claremont Graduate University, and he looked at how Christian women leaders helped reshape the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, also known as SCLC, from the ground up. He focuses on how these women helped shift the movement tactics from top down, clergy-led protests to grassroots, community-based action. His research highlights the impact of citizenship schools, which empowered thousands of everyday people and helped transform how the SCLC approached community engagement. Women like Bernice Robinson, who taught at the school, and Ella Baker, who pushed for more decentralized leadership, played key roles in building lasting local movements. Instead of just focusing on big demonstrations, they emphasized education, voter registration, and deep local organizing as real tools for liberation and fighting for justice. Lee takes a deep dive into the historical records. He also uses archives, church documents, news articles, and internal papers from the SCLC and related groups. He also looks at conference notes and personal letters that shine a light on strategic roles that women leaders played, roles that often got overlooked. Through these sources, he shows how women like Satima Clark and Dorothy Cotton weren't just organizing and training. They were shaping major decisions inside the SCLC. Their letters and communication reveal a steady push for leadership that started at the grassroots level and put community needs front and center rather than relying on top-down control. Lee shows that Christian women leaders didn't just support the SCLC, they helped reshape how it worked. Thanks to their advocacy, the organization started focusing more on local empowerment, long-term organizing, and building strong coalitions. He makes it clear that these women weren't just behind the scenes. They were driving the strategy by pushing for change within. They challenged traditional gender roles and made the movement stronger. In the end, Lee helps us see that their leadership was absolutely essential to the civil rights movement's success. Emerging themes. Together, Mingo and Lee's work surfaces key themes. Key themes such as theological foundations of activism, community centered leadership, challenging historical invisibility, strategic innovation by women, expanding understanding the civil rights movement. These findings align directly with my dissertation topic, which seeks to map out how Black women shape local campaigns outside of Montgomery. Campaigns that were just as significant, but oftentimes overlooked. By focusing on these overlooked efforts, my work will emphasize how these women not only advance civil rights, but also redefine what activism looks like in their communities. Their contribution highlights the power of local leadership and the necessity of expanding the historical narrative to fully capture the impact. In conclusion, Black women were the backbone of the civil rights movement. Through a blend of lived theology and tactical leadership, they launched transformative campaigns that redefined democracy from the ground up. As Mingo and Lee show, it's time to center these women in both scholarship and public memory. Their leadership not only shaped the movement, but also laid the foundation for future generations to continue to fight for justice and equality. By acknowledging their critical contributions, we ensure that their voices remain integral to the ongoing struggle for civil rights as well as social change. And I want to thank you so much for listening today and watching, and I look forward to your responses. Good afternoon, Greenbrier Middle